I want to preface this video by saying that this is strictly out of love for the game and Marathon, in hopes that the game truly has a place to grow and thrive for a long period of time. That said, there are some core systems that are missing in Marathon that I think are creating an unneeded level of aggression. So initially, let's ask ourselves a question. Why does loot stop mattering in Marathon? Now, this has dual meaning to it. Think about it. I'm referring to looting items outside of players not meaning anything and gear fear. Your gear is temporary, so there's no reason to realistically keep it in your vault. Additionally, past that, there's no real reason to loot certain items past a certain point. And before you bite my head off, because I know you're probably going to, hear me out. Loot is causing multiple problems, and you are absolutely being affected by it. You probably just don't really realize how you're being affected by it. Now, the way that this is actually going to affect players is going to vary based off of how far along in the progression you are. For me specifically, at this point, there's really no reason for me to loot any gray items or green items. I'm already past that level of faction progression and cradle progression to really not need it anymore. So what does that actually do for me? And how does it affect everybody else because of that? And this literally is going to apply to everybody, whether or not you're actually past the point of needing gray progression, green progression, whatever. The people that are past that point, that is what is actually going to affect you. And I want to consider this video as like a spiritual successor to my previous video. I'll link that down in the comments below. Highly recommend you check that out because I'm talking about how player retention is being affected. And this specifically plays directly into that. Personally, when I'm loading into Outpost or Cryo Archive, I'm not looking at floor loot anymore. And that's a huge problem. Why am I not looking at floor loot? Well, because I understand that that loot holds no value or meaning at this point in the game for me. And that is naturally going to cause a rift in the actual gameplay loop. And that rift that I'm talking about is with me not needing to loot that stuff and other players that are even further along than I am, with them not having to loot that stuff, what is that going to do? Because the most valuable loot for us is going to come off of players. We have no reason to pick up these salvageable items or even valuables when we could just simply clear the lobby, wipe the lobby, play super aggressive, and literally loot your bodies for that stuff anyway. Currently, as far as the factions go, I'm progressing purple items at this point. Like, I have no reason to collect grays, greens, blues, okay? And that pushes me to play a certain way. And that's what I'm referring to. Now, there are some people that are totally done with their purple progression trees. You know what I mean? And those people literally have no reason to go into a map and do anything else other than PvP. And that's what I'm essentially getting at. That is why loot does not matter. And that is exactly how you're being affected by these systems, even if you don't feel like you're being affected by these systems, because these people are going to hunt you down. They're going to steal your stuff. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if we could make some adjustments inside of Marathon to actually give those players different opportunities inside of a map as opposed to just PvPing? And with this, I want to circle to another game real quickly because I think it does a perfect implementation of these systems that I think could allow and push Marathon forward for more players. And you guessed it, that's going to be Tarkov. Every single item in Tarkov has a meaning. It has a purpose in the game. And while Marathon has that, it doesn't necessarily have it to the extent that Tarkov does. And I think there are a few ways that Tarkov actually does this that Marathon could potentially learn from. For starters, they've got the flea market. I don't think that Marathon will ever have a flea market, and realistically, I don't think it's very good. But it does give the opportunity to allow players to walk into a map and literally loot anything that they possibly see and take it out and sell it for cash, right? That is one way to play the game. And that one way is one more way that other people have to not just PvP. And that additional way is going to do so much for the game. Like, quite frankly, like if you have more reason to go in and simply loot the map as opposed to just PvPing, what is that inherently going to do? It's going to reduce PvP, and it's going to allow some of these newer players to have less friction and actually get to the point where they are hooked onto the actual gameplay loop. I know we've all heard it. Marathon plays more like a battle royale than an extraction shooter. And in a lot of instances, I tend to agree with that. In addition to the flea market, there's barters, which inside of Tarkov, I think the barters are infinitely better. While they are static, they actually make a lot more sense. Like a lot of the barters inside a marathon, I'm pretty sure they're just RNG. Like they make, there's no sense, there's no rhyme or reason. They just are what they are. And I think that there needs to be better rotations that actually make more sense from what you get for what you spend. And that's just a balancing thing. I think that they just need to take a little bit more time to make that system make sense. In addition, we have the hideout inside of Tarkov. And a lot of people have mentioned, when I mentioned crafting in the past, oh, well, we have bartering. Well, I mean, we do, but that's not crafting. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, what if we had a system in place where you could actually take out, you know, the gray patch kits and the gray shield kits, and then you could actually use them, put them into some sort of hideout or crafting system, and then upgrade those into green heals. That gives you another way to actually take some of the loot out of a map, implement it into another system inside of the game to progress your character. And kind of iterating on that a little bit and building it a little bit further, we could actually make those crafted green heals slightly better than the ones that you find inside the raid. That way you actually have incentive to go out and craft these items. Additionally, you could do that with pretty much anything. Like think about like purple backpacks, you can upgrade them into gold backpacks, or blue backpacks that you could upgrade into purple backpacks with a handful of items. What is that going to do for us? Well, and I think there actually has to be a way to take less than items and create better items with those items, because it, like I said previously, it gets to a certain point where you have no reason to loot gray and green items. What if we could make those valuable again? What if you took, 10 unstable biomass, yeah, you turned poop and you added it to a green backpack, and that made a blue backpack? That inherently adds value to looting inside of a match, and that looting inside of the match is going to take away a lot of that initial PvP friction, allowing more players to do different things inside of the game to actually thrive on Tau Ceti. Again, I know a lot of you are not done with your faction progression or your creative progression, but the point here is there are a lot of people that are done with that progression, and that is actually what is affecting you more than anything. Those people have literally no reason to go around and loot other than just looting raw players. Real quick, I want to give a huge shout out to my Discord. We are building an amazing community here, and if you were looking for like-minded individuals that are thoroughly enjoying Marathon without the negativity, and you just want a game, join us. Join the faction. And if you're enjoying the video so far, hit that subscribe button. I think my favorite part about this idea and making loot actually valuable again is that it's going to bring back other maps into the rotation. Because right now, when you get past a certain point, you're essentially playing 50% of the game. And what do I mean by that? Well, 50% of the game, we've got 4 maps, and 2 of those maps are actually worthwhile, whereas the other 2 realistically aren't. And I don't think ranked is a feasible way to actually make these maps relevant again, because most people don't want to play ranked, and on top of that, ranked is ranked. It's not a very fun experience. I think people have kind of hit the nail on the head, and ranked should probably be a sponsored survival, like a sponsored kit. You just bring it in, you have the same kits, and you rank off based off of that. But that's another video. Perimeter is my favorite map. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the way it flows. I just like the overall feeling of it and the story that it tells. I mean, there's a lot of lore written into that map that you can just walk around and experience. And I would love to experience that more. But like, as a player at my progression level, there's realistically no reason for me to go back to that. Ranked can't be the answer. Ranked is ranked. Like, it plays entirely different, and it is essentially that battle royale mode that we're referring to, and that is fine for that purpose, but it can't be the answer for the core gameplay loop. It just can't be. Real quick though, just humor me. Like, imagine that we had a hideout system in the game, and gray and green and blue loot was actually valued inside of that hideout and crafting system. One, you have to use it to actually build up the hideout. Secondly, you have to utilize the items to actually craft additional items. And these items can be like on a cooldown. Like you hit your craft and it takes 4 hours to actually make the item. That is going to literally give you another reason or another way to actually play inside a marathon that isn't just strictly PvP. Because why look at Tarkov. I mean, let's use it as an example, because there are literally ways to play Tarkov that aren't going to involve PvP. You can literally just go in, loot a POI, and bounce, and actually get valuable stuff out of that POI that you can use one way or the other because of the flea market. Like, that is what Marathon, in my opinion, is missing. It's missing systems that allow you to progress the game and experience the game in multiple ways. What if also, because of that hideout system, you could implement some sort of event across Tau Ceti where certain things spawn? Now, initially, I'm thinking of like the Cycle Frontier and the oil rigs, or the mining rigs that came down. Like, you could literally call them in if you had certain resources on the map. That would be so interesting if you wanted to create additional PvP on the map. Like, you could literally call people to a certain location, but additionally, if you actually came out successfully, you could use those materials to actually craft, specific items, or maybe items that you can't get inside of the game itself. You can only get them through crafting. Like, there are so many ways to iterate on this and just build on top of it and just create a different experience. And I think that at the end of the day, that is what Marathon has to do for it to actually succeed. I think that it can't be a typical extraction shooter. I mean, it is right now, and it's not doing well. But I feel like it's in this unique opportunity where it can go a certain direction, but it needs to figure out what direction that actually needs to be. I still think extraction shooters are a growing genre, and I think as soon as somebody figures out the formula, they're going to be the next big thing, like battle royales. They're very clearly popular with a certain subset of people, and there's a way to make that available to more people. It just hasn't been found yet. I think Marathon literally has the ability to do it. In a genre that is all about looting and extracting, Marathon is currently missing the loot portion of that. And I think that is what is causing it to be this battle royale. At the end of the day, loot should always lead to something. With loot leading to something, that is going to open up more opportunities for players to progress in different ways. It's going to lead to less PvP. It's going to lead to more player retention. And it's going to lead to more design opportunities to build Marathon out for the future.
Runners who adapt, survive. Runners who survive, return. If you're still receiving these transmissions, join the faction. Learn from the dead. Find us.